And well, first of all, thank you so much, Sally, for taking the time to have a chat with us. Is my first time chatting with an author of a book, so it's very exciting.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just ask about this whole book. When reading the testimonies and all the interviews you did and all the people you talked to, especially I would picture myself doing that and receiving all these messages. I cannot imagine how do you cope with hearing all these different stories from people that are displaced or the ones that were detained, and knowing that you couldn't provide kind of instant help, but maybe later on with the reporting and journalism and everything that you do. But how did you feel this powerlessness feeling at times? How did you handle it? Yeah, just a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm honored to be the first author you're speaking to. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was really difficult. I say difficult. The situation is heartbreaking. You know, it's horrible. I mean, obviously, I'm not the person suffering in this situation. You know, but I guess it was a very strange thing that happened that I ended up becoming kind of a go-to person for so many people who were in a very desperate situation. And it was really difficult because, I mean, I was freelance, you know, like completely freelance. So I wasn't an employee being paid to do this work. I was doing it in my home and, you know, in wherever I might be. Like there was one point at the beginning where I remember being frightened even to get on the underground in London because I was going to lose connection. And I'd be like, if I don't have internet connection, anything could happen. And, you know, I just felt this big responsibility. And it was strange that that happened. And it showed kind of the breakdown of the systems that were supposed to be helping people, you know, the people who were being paid to do this, you know, to do these jobs sometimes who maybe weren't, weren't stepping in, or, you know, the just failure of the failure to kind of care for vulnerable people. And I think that I tried to be quite clear with people when they contacted me. You know, I'm a journalist. I'm not an aid worker. You know, I have no power. I'm not in Libya. I can't. I can't. All I can do is tell people what's happening. And it became quite strange as well because normally as a journalist, our focus is just publishing information. But a lot of the times it would be very dangerous to publish information. So actually I was just sending it to organizations that could help without making anything public. And yeah, I mean, I did feel like that was important. And certainly, like on smaller levels, there could be change, you know, like one detention center, for example, if they hadn't had food for a few days and then they'd contact me and I'd contact various, you know, groups, and food then might appear. In other cases, the opposite happened. You know, there was more of a crackdown, and actually there was more kind of abuse after I would make something public or I would tell someone about it. And that was very difficult to bear. And I think that, yeah, I was kind of feeling my way. I had never really been in a situation like this before. And I mean, it's wrong to say at that time I had any kind of, you know, balance in my life. Like this was like my number one focus, you know, this was everywhere that I was. This was the thing that I cared about and the thing that I was thinking about. You know, I remember being at a friend's their child's first birthday party, and I was just reading my phone all the time, you know, looking at these messages. And I think people around me would probably say that I wasn't really like involved in my own life at that time because I cared so much about this. And I think in the long term, that's not sustainable. You know, you have to I think in an emergency situation like it was, and still continues to be, but like at the time when I was playing this role, I couldn't just turn away. You know, the harm to me would have actually maybe been greater if I turned away, because you feel like, you know, you could even do something small to help, and actually, yeah, it's like this idea of moral injury, you know. But I think in the longer term, like other people started getting involved, and that was, you know, I felt like when other people wanted to get involved, I wasn't going to make, be like, this is my job, I'm the only one who should do that. I felt like the more people involved, the better. So, it's not like nobody should kind of carry those burdens alone, I think. But of course, I feel like still a sense of failure, that the broader situation is continuing. And like, I think that always you're thinking, what's the next thing I can do that will help? And, I was always thinking, like, what report can I publish? What, maybe if it's on TV, that will mean that people can't say it doesn't exist. Maybe if it's in a big publication, like the New York Times or like someone, some international publication, then people will be forced to act. And I felt very disheartened when, I did all of those things. And then I was like, well, if I write the book will, make it so that all the evidence is collected together. And still, it didn't lead to massive change. And that's very difficult. And I don't know what else to say about that. But I'm sure you guys, through your work, you also feel this. But I still think we have to still note like micro achievements, if that makes sense, in terms of like you can help people still on a micro level, and you can see change on a micro level, even if you're not seeing those kind of big broader changes that you would imagine. And I still think that that's valuable and it means something. And you can't I don't know if that's it. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but
no, but it makes sense what you said about the micro achievements. Like, I guess that was your drive, or what kept you. I don't know. It's hard finding hope, like in this. I guess in this situation, especially with this topic, as more as you learn, the more you see how kind of bad everything is working, or the organizations that are involved maybe are not really doing their job. But thank you a lot for answering.
And I think learning is the first step towards, like, learning is already doing something. I think that's like, for me, if I made other people learn about it, I'm like, that means something to me. Like, I think at the beginning I might have been like, I wouldn't have maybe valued that so much. But now I'm like, well, I talk to so many European politicians and they say, we can't do anything until people care about this. Like, we just, the way they say, I'm not saying that this is acceptable, but like the way that for them politics works is like, we need the people to show that they care about something before we will take action. And so I think that like every person, showing they care or taking action, or, like it does, like informing yourself is the first step towards making that difference, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Sally. I'm going to continue on the hope trajectory with a question from one of our volunteers, Claire. Because at Europe Must Act, I shared a little bit with you before, we advocate for refugees and people on the move. We do reports and resources and try to connect volunteers and people across Europe. And one thing that we've tried to do over the years is prioritize hope-based communications. But I'm wondering, obviously, given the context and like, especially with your reporting and the things that we have to share and platform, do you think that's a realistic thing? Or do you think, like, how do you kind of prioritize the balance between kind of reality and hope and those sorts of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I try personally not to think so much about, is this report positive or negative, or like, what's my messaging, like as a journalist, which I know is very arguable. Everybody brings their own biases, and, the idea of objectivity and all this stuff, it's very, contested. But I do try and just report on what is happening as accurately as I can. And like the goal with journalism often is that the reader, or generally is that the reader can make up their own mind, and you want to give them the information so that they can decide how they see it. But you're right. I think that people do just feel totally despondent and like they can't do anything. And like I've felt like that a lot of the time, which is why I'm also grateful to have communication with other people who say, you know, we see changes, or like that's also why I've appreciated more, you know, a lot of the people who went through Libya, I've stayed in touch with them when they're in Europe, and I see them now moving on with their lives and, you know, getting jobs and getting married and having children. And you know, that's like, sometimes they'll be like to me, why are you so depressed? And I'm like, well, the world is terrible, you know, but I do think that I've learned from other people that you also need to take moments of joy when you see them, and that, you know, different, like every life, you know, you can impact a life through your work. Maybe not, you don't change the whole system, but like every individual matters, right? And like every act of like kindness or goodness or yeah, like care, like it does matter to people. And I think that hope, it sounds like a cliche now, I feel like I've said this before too, because somebody said it to me, but like hope is an action, it's not just a feeling, you know, so you can act like you're hopeful even if you don't feel like you're hopeful. And I think that that's necessary, because part of what, I mean, yeah, part of the idea of like powerful people maintaining their power is to make the other people feel like they don't have power. And yeah, I guess by not being hopeful, we're kind of giving into that, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's tricky. And I mean, I'm interested also in your work and how you deal with that. Because yeah, it can feel very, and you don't want to sugarcoat anything, you know, if someone is really suffering, you don't want to say, oh, but look at this good part of whatever it is, you know, you have to actually acknowledge the suffering.
Definitely. And you touched on well, sorry, my follow-up question is, how do you, like you, so yeah, we're a group of primarily volunteers, and Europe Must Act has gone through fluctuations in, not motivation, that's the wrong word, but I'd say, well, projects and, you know, momentum is a good word. Yeah, momentum. And we're kind of in an upswing at the moment, which is great. But with journalism and the content you write about, how do you deal with kind of burnout, or like, and also kind of your own safety? There's parts, I know in your author's note, about, you know, not being able to go certain places and safety. So how do you kind of protect yourself and your mental well-being?
Yeah, I think that it's yeah, again, it can be tricky. I think that my safety, I faced various issues when I was reporting on this topic, which I guess are in the book. And more recently, I think it's not in the book, that I'm not able to get into Rwanda now because of reporting I did. I tried to board a plane there in 2024, and I wasn't allowed on the plane. I was told authorities had sent a email to the airline saying I specifically couldn't board. And I faced some other issues regarding, I mean, I haven't been to Libya still. Like, I tried to go quite a lot of times, but I think at this point I probably wouldn't go for now, because I just, you know, I feel like I just don't know. I don't understand the risk fully. Like, I know that at a particular time I was warned, you know, that I was in danger if I went, and I just don't understand where that lies right now. And I think that unless I had a good reason to, you know, to go, basically, or to, you know, I'm assessing everything as well. What can I do by doing this? You know, what can I get out of it that would be valuable? And if I can't identify that, then probably I won't do it. And yeah, but I think that, wait, sorry, the other part of the question was in terms of my motivation. Like ebbing and flowing on my motivation. I think it does help being a journalist and having deadlines. Like, so it's, you know, even I'm going to go back to Sicily this month or next month, and report again on the Mediterranean situation. And, you know, I'm working for a newspaper, so they'll also publish it. And So that's, having deadlines definitely helps if you're a journalist. But I think that, I've definitely struggled with motivation, and it's been a challenge to maintain that. And I think that I didn't realize, like, burnout, it's not just that you're tired, it's like that you stop thinking anything matters. Like, you're suddenly like, it doesn't, nothing I can do is going to change this situation, and actually everybody knows, and what's the point, and I think that is really hard to struggle against. But it's also why it's like really amazing to meet people who care, like, and to meet, to have connections with people who are really motivated. Because I remember when I started doing this work, and I was talking to, people who work in human rights or people who work in various organizations that I won't name, and they'd say to me, like, you're so energetic, like, I don't think you're going to maintain this. And I'd be like, how can everybody not care? I don't get how you can be, how you're not treating this as an emergency. But I do think that, that's why also it's important to have as many people care as possible, and, all hands on deck, because we can't all maintain that type of energy for long periods of time. It's why teamwork is important, and it's why networks are important. And, it's kind of like a relay race or something. Like, people can step in when others step out, so that's also, I guess, why, I mean, you guys would know about activism much more than me, but I know activists, they don't like having one person necessarily be the face of everything, because it's like, you need as many people as possible to to be involved and to care and to share the burden and to share the message as well.
So this is from our volunteer, Elisa. Are you still in touch with people currently detained in Libyan detention centers? So you mentioned you've been in touch with people that are now in Europe and kind of moved on. But are you still in touch with people there? And yes. Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I think right now I'm not in touch with anyone inside a detention center. I am in touch with a lot of the people who were in detention before. And I mean, my life has kind of taken a strange turn in that I moved to Lebanon in January 2024, and then the war broke out, or it was kind of happening, but it escalated drastically. And I've ended up reporting on war there for the last 2 years. So my focus slightly, I wouldn't say shifted in that I don't care, but like I said, when I finished, when I was publishing the book, and then what happened, like when I was coming to the end of that, was many other people started getting involved, including like groups like Refugees in Libya, I'm sure you guys know. And it was for me, it was brilliant to see like all of these other people and voices who were taking up this cause and this message. And for me, when the book came out, I ended up not that I deliberately stopped reporting, but more that I'd say my reporting, I've continued it, but not like less people were reaching out to me as well. And I mean, obviously years have passed now, so but I am still in touch with people who have gone through. I mean, I've seen some of them. I can't remember the last time, but we still message even pretty, I wouldn't say all the time. The thing is also I think for a lot of people, I also kind of represented the worst time in their life in a way. And so I'm also quite like, I don't like contacting people too often to be like, just to remind them of that. Like, I feel like if they want to come to me and talk, then that's great. And there's various people that I'm still in pretty regular contact with, but I'm also not kind of, hassling people when they're busy with their new lives,
I have a few other questions from volunteers, but before that, does anyone on the call, would you like to ask any questions? Marielle, Alex, Claire, Elsa? Then, Elsa, after you.
Sorry.
No, after
I might have a question. Which impact did you feel like your book had on the general opinion? Like, did you feel like it helped people understand what was happening? or and I guess politicians as well. You said you were talking to them as well. Like, did you feel it made some sort of impact or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been quite frustrating, like I said earlier. So, like, I've had really, like, high-profile top politicians, say to me personally, I appreciated your book so much. It was amazing. And then you still see their public kind of statements that they make or the policies that they've supported, and it seems totally at odds, and that I find that very frustrating and upsetting that, people originally, when I was writing the book, I was like, well, people must not know, the people in power must not know this is happening. And since then, like 2024, I think, or 2023, I was invited to the European Parliament to make a speech about the book and the topic. And, it's been used in various legal challenges, including cited in a submission to the ICC for calling for them to investigate named European officials for crimes against humanity. I think also Gaza obviously started in 2023, and perhaps that also distracted some attention, from this situation, because the book only came out in 2022. And I think like one of the impacts that has been really interesting, so I've had a lot of people come up to me and say that it's changed their perspective on the world, and people telling me also that they chose their careers based on it, which is, I never would have imagined that. And particularly people who kind of wanted to be involved in refugee rights and were thinking, I should go and work for one of these big agencies, and actually have kind of reassessed where they think that where they think they could be useful. And one very interesting impact has been medics. Like, a lot of medics have told me that it's given them an understanding when they meet patients, who say certain things. They actually know now what they're talking about. For example, my eyes are damaged because I spent time in Libya. Now they'll be like, oh, maybe they were in a detention center without light, whereas a lot of the time somebody won't fully explain what they're talking about, for lots of reasons, trauma, or they might not understand that somebody doesn't know about it, or whatever it may be. And so it was actually recommended in the British Journal of General Practitioners, the GP journal in UK. Someone wrote a review, I think last month, of the book, and said, we as doctors actually have the capacity on an individual basis to try and right some of these injustices by how we deal with people, like on a personal level. And they were like, we should read this book. It gives us more understanding of, what our patients have been through. And I thought that as an impact, that was like not something that I ever imagined, but it's actually incredibly meaningful, because if any doctors are, now being faced with somebody who's been through Libya and have more understanding of what they've gone through and treat them in a, slightly better way, I think that, to an individual, that will mean a lot. So, and I think like there's been other things like the MEP Barry Andrews, who proposed this. Do you remember there was the vote to not have EU led search and rescue in the I think I've lost track of all dates now, but I think it was 2019, and the MEPs voted not to have EU led search and rescue, and not to suspend support to the Libyan Coast Guard based on violations of fundamental rights. And I know that he has read the book, and other MEPs, like he said, a lot of MEPs have read it, and they voted then to, they kind of redid this vote, and it went the other way. But the problem is it's kind of a symbolic vote. It's not a binding resolution. And so, yeah, there's been lots of kind of things like that, but not, I wouldn't say anything kind of that, massive total change has come from it. And I mean, the situation is continuing, as I'm sure you all know, which is just devastating. So I don't know.
No, but that's already like everything you said. I think it's really amazing that happens, and it actually has like concrete effects on people and on. Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's because you can't also totally measure it, right? Like I even got a message from somebody who said that they were in a relationship with someone who had gone through Libya, and they said like that person wasn't talking about again what they had been through, and they read the book, and that gave them an understanding suddenly of what their partner had been through. So I think that yeah, you can't like measure necessarily all of those implications, but yeah, for me it doesn't seem like enough, honestly. It seems like there should have. I just couldn't believe that anyone can see that this is happening, and and have it continue. And obviously, like the EU is complicit in crimes against humanity, and that is just like, yeah, like I don't know. I've said this before, but like I'm a European. Like this is being done in my name, and that's just like, yeah, devastating to see it continue.
That I'm aware we have a few minutes left. Maybe we can steal you for another 5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, my answers are a bit long.
No, they're excellent. They're in depth and excellent. And the speaking of the EU, so one of our volunteers, Elise, has asked. So Europe often frames migration as an existential crisis, despite the relatively small numbers involved, but your reporting documents a system in which migrants are routinely exposed to violence, abandonment, and death. Do you think these are connected? So the political construction of migrants as a threat makes them, treats their lives as disposable. And she also referenced Arjun Appadurai, sorry, pronouncing it badly, fear of small numbers, and Akhil Membe's idea of necropolitics. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I know I told you I'd look up both of those, and I didn't. So
okay.
I can't necessarily answer in relation to the references. But yeah, I mean, I think that one question that I asked myself, which maybe is in the book, is like even the use of the word migrants, like why we say migrants instead of people, and if we had tourists who were drowning, like immediately people would be like, we have to go rescue them, but if we have migrants drowning, it's like becomes a debate. And I think that like, yeah, this idea of dehumanization, like when I gave that speech in the European Parliament, I literally projected the definition of dehumanization behind me, because I thought like everybody needs to be conscious of this. And I think that me, like as a journalist, I've been guilty in the past of kind of, just writing in a specific way that is dehumanizing, like just using certain terms, or using certain, even just saying, 200 migrants die at sea, like rather than treating, like saying people, first of all, but also treating it like, the same, on the same level as a news story if it was like other people had died in a different situation. And I think it takes you a while for you to go, wait, why am I doing this? Like, why is it that we're thinking like this? And I think that terms like migration management, as you all know, like, do people realize that means people being locked up indefinitely, without charge or trial in situations that they may die in, where they're facing torture or whatever it may be? These very sterile terms. And yeah, I mean, I've said this before, but it's a global inequality crisis is really the situation that is happening on the planet. And yeah, I think that, yeah, we do need to look at whose life is being treated more than someone else's life. And it's very sad as well that people who are going through this, they're conscious of that, or there's certainly a point when they become conscious of that and suddenly go, oh, my life is deemed less important than somebody else's. And I think that facing up to that yourself, I don't even know what that would do to you psychologically, to understand that actually, I'm not seen as valuable, or my children aren't seen as valuable as, as these other people. And yeah, I think that it's something that we need to fight. Like,
I was grateful. Excuse me. You included terminology, like a little section on terminology specifically, because I think that's very important and is obviously weaponized politically. And those are all of our questions. Just before we wrap up, I'd love, speaking of hope, I know you have another book out. I'm sure we'd all be interested to read. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about This Is Also a Love Story.
Yeah, sure. So the new book came out a month ago, I guess, or 2 weeks ago, or I've lost track of time, a week maybe ago in America, and a month ago, a bit over in UK and Ireland, and I guess the rest of the world in English. And it was actually my first idea for a book, strangely, before I started reporting, or before I started doing this work on Libya. Like early 2018, I had this idea to do a book of love stories, which maybe sounds lame, but the idea was to look at kind of crisis situations, but true stories of things people do for people they love, not just romantic, but for family members, or in one case at least for community as well. And not even, I mean, I kind of defined it a bit broadly too, because I looked at love for humanity, what I would see as just doing kind things, even for strangers, or courageous things. And so it's 9 different countries, 9 different crises, from Ukraine to Syria to Nigeria, Rwanda, Japan as well is there, Iraq is there. And it's just looking at different stories of love, basically. And I think that it opens, I mean, people have been like, that's a bit weird, why are you writing about that? But actually, I think it's really the same theme, because it's about also, humans existing in these situations, and also kind of more broadly about the idea of dehumanization, and how that can be used to enable atrocities, and how you have to remember that people exist at the center of all these situations.
Thank you so much. That sounds, I don't know who would think that's weird. I think that sounds beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And just before we wrap up, would anyone else like to say anything before we thank Sally? Cool. Sally, thank you so much for joining us, and making the time, and we're all looking forward to reading your next one, and would love to tell you, I'll speak to you separately about what we're up to as well, if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.